Chapter 12. Eckhart's driving was never erratic, but that day Sides felt a subtle edge in the way he moved through the city. It was only a matter of milliseconds, but to Sides it was noticeable. Eckhart pushed through yellow lights that were already fading to red, his timing sharper, riskier than usual. In a left-turn lane with its own arrow, he accelerated just as the oncoming cars were beginning to surge forward. These small changes might have gone unnoticed by anyone else, but Sides was on high alert, and every shift in pace caught his attention. He glanced sideways as Eckhart steered them through the university district and into the old industrial blocks beyond. Sides shifted in his seat, fidgeting, and eventually reached up to grip the grab handle without thinking. When they entered their office neighborhood, Eckhart rolled through 2 stop signs before pulling into the lot. As the SUV slowed, Sides' shoulders rocked forward and back with each press of the brake. He said nothing. The vehicle came to a stop. Eckhart's hand went straight to the push-button ignition, cutting the engine. Sides watched as his left hand moved to the door handle, then hesitated. Through the heated lines of the windshield, Eckhart stared at the office door. A moment of silence stretched between them. He lifted his right hand, as if about to offer a grave observation or confess something troubling. But before any words emerged, he grimaced, shifted his weight, and shoved the door open with his shoulder. As the driver's side door swung open, a wave of cool autumn air rushed into the cabin, brushing over Sides and waking him from his tension. He drew in a deep breath, savoring the crisp scent of fallen leaves and distant smoke. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Somehow, everything was going to be all right. This felt like a quest worth completing, not only because it was the strangest case he had ever taken on, but because of its sheer complexity. There were too many moving parts, too many hidden hands at play. That uncertainty stirred something in him he hadn't felt in years. It was uncomfortable, and yet, in a way, he welcomed it. He had learned to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Eckhart's hulking frame stepped into view, rifling through his pockets for the office key. Sides reached for his own door handle, pushed against it with his shoulder, and stepped out into the cool air. They entered the office one after the other. Inside, the air was cool, but carried a familiar, musty tang they never quite got used to. It wasn't the smell itself that intrigued them, but the way it triggered memories, childhood visits to their parents' workplaces decades ago. The aroma was earthy, like the faint scent left after a fire pit cools, and it clung to the old walls and carpet. The office itself was worn and tired. Dark brown carpet met 3-paneled walls, all dulled by years of neglect. Water stains bled across ceiling tiles. The carpet, faded and uneven from decades of foot traffic, was no better. It was sad in its way, a lonely building in a hollowed-out part of town, a casualty of offshoring in time. Yet something about it, the nostalgia hidden in its scent and the low rent, kept them rooted here. Neither man spoke as they moved through the office toward the back room. Eckhart slipped behind the desk, still cluttered with papers and files, and sank into his worn leather chair. Sides followed, brushing a stack of folders off the nearby seat before lowering himself. The old leather creaked as Eckhart leaned back, the chair swaying slightly. His face was drawn, troubled. Tilting to one side, he pressed his fingers against his cheeks and lips, then exhaled slowly, a tense jaw, a spin of the chair. At last, he faced Sides. They stared at each other in a silence heavy with understanding. Both knew what was coming. "I'm not really sure," Eckhart began, leaning forward, his elbows on the desk. He clasped his hands together and rested his chin atop them, adopting a posture that Sides had seen 100 times before. It unsettled him every time. They weren't supposed to be boss and subordinate. They were supposed to be equals, friends forged over years of hard cases and late nights. But there sat Eckhart, framed by the desk like a corporate magnate, and there sat Sides, the subordinate, waiting. Planned or not, it didn't sit right with him. Sides sized up the situation in an instant, then shifted in his chair, readying a counter gesture of his own. "Oh, get off it, Brian. You're always backing out when things get too complicated. Not everything in life is going to be at the free throw line," Sides snapped. "I'm just saying, Richard, the critical window to make progress on this case might have already passed." "What are you talking about?" "Richard, the police already have someone in custody. If that detective was who we think he is, then that whole compound is going down." Eckhart's voice rose, sharp and certain. "Weber doesn't miss, Richard. He always gets the confession. He's the only damn detective on the force who can secure a conviction without DNA or video evidence. You know how it is. Times have changed. DNA and video are the only two things juries buy anymore. If you don't have one of those, no one confesses, no one convicts. That's why every detective chases those two things, every one of them except Weber." Eckhart leaned forward, eyes fierce. Sides turned his gaze toward the hallway, deliberately avoiding Eckhart's eyes. And Eckhart was right. Nothing had reshaped public perception of evidence more than DNA and video. These were the clean, quick ways to tell a story now. Juries, through no fault of their own, were steeped in a digital world. Video, especially, had become almost sacred. The mere threat of seeing it in court could make defendants crumble. And when the footage was graphic enough, not even the sharpest cross-examination could compete with that new idol of modernity. Despite all this, Sides knew Eckhart was right about Weber. The man was a beast, a relic of a bygone era that somehow still thrived in the 21st century. Weber never relied on DNA, never fretted over the absence of video evidence. He knew how to pull a confession from someone and hand a case to the district attorney neatly wrapped, airtight. He understood every trick defense attorneys used to dismantle a confession, every weakness in its narrative structure. He knew exactly when to press and just how hard shifts in testimony didn't rattle him. If questioned himself, he had answers ready before the words left the examiner's mouth. That kind of skill had all but vanished in modern policing, and if Weber so much as suspected one of the Adherents clergy, it wouldn't be long before the case was his, and that was dangerous for more reasons than Sides cared to count. "Okay," Sides said, lifting his hands in a calming gesture. "Let's take a step back and think this through." "Sure," Eckhart replied, the word flat, distracted. "First," Sides continued, pushing himself up from his chair, "let's take a personal inventory. What exactly do we have?" Eckhart leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing in thought. "Well, we've got a murdered Alfonso Silva. We've got a friend who confirmed Alfonso was in recovery and doubts he would have relapsed. That same friend also confirmed Alfonso was involved in a new religious movement." "Right," Sides said, pacing a slow step. "What else?" "Let me think." Eckhart's chair creaked as he sank deeper into it. "We've got an abandoned house with literature tied to the Adherents, presumably the same group Alfonso was mixed up with." "Correct," Sides said, nodding. "What else?" "We've got a cardinal who is arguing with what we think was Weber," Eckhart offered. Sides frowned, then gave a slow nod. Eckhart sensed Sides wanted him to dig deeper. He leaned back, eyes drifting up to the stained ceiling tiles. His lips moved soundlessly as he sorted through fragments of memory. After a long pause, he crossed his arms, leaned forward, and something clicked. "Let's assume that was Weber," Eckhart said. "Uh-huh. Why was he arguing with a cardinal?" "Bingo," Sides replied. "Why was he arguing with a cardinal?" "Why was he, Eckhart started to echo, then stopped mid-thought. "Richard, wait. Why was Weber there in the first place?" Sides pressed his lips together, tilting his head slightly. That was the question he'd been waiting for, though his look now begged for answers neither of them had. Without speaking, they both understood. They were behind Weber. If the man in the cruiser really was a clergyman named Haidt, Weber was already pulling ahead, fast, and Weber's notorious secrecy only made it worse. Reaching out through Eckhart's many contacts was out of the question. They'd never get a straight answer about Haidt or why he was being interrogated. They needed more information, more leverage. Because if Weber secured a confession, or if Haidt led him to Alfonso Silva's killer, then all the work they'd done would mean nothing. The reward would vanish. If Weber has this Haidt character downtown, he's closing in, Eckhart said. We're behind, but we can't just walk away. The Silvas need us, brother, Sides replied. There's no way we can get to anyone Weber has in custody, Eckhart added. If that even was Weber, Sides said lightly. Oh, shut up, Richard, Eckhart snapped. You'd know him if you saw him. I only met him once, and that was years ago, Sides shot back. I was just there to secure the scene until the cavalry arrived. It was only for a few seconds. But you have seen him, Eckhart pressed. In all my years downtown, I never saw him once in any courtroom. That's not really remarkable, though. There are plenty of people downtown you've never seen or spoken to. Sides leaned back slightly. Think about it. When's the last time you actually saw your neighbors loading grocery bags through their back door? Grocery bags? What the hell does that have to do with anything? Eckhart asked, incredulous. I don't know, Brian. Grocery bags. When's the last time you saw your neighbors bringing groceries into their house? I don't know, Richard. I can't say for sure, Eckhart said, a cynical edge in his voice. Right, Sides nodded calmly. You've never seen your neighbors bring in groceries, but you know that they do. Eckhart narrowed his eyes. What's your point? The point is that there are countless things happening around you, carried out by people you've never met. All of it goes on without your knowledge. So no, it's not remarkable that you never saw Weber downtown. Not once. It doesn't prove anything. Sides let out a weary sigh. I don't know, Brian, I'm just tired, and it made more sense in my head when I was saying it. Eckhart nodded slowly and turned his chair toward the window behind him. The glass was grimy, but through it he could still make out shifting shapes outside. Leaves drifted down from the neighborhood's trees, some still green and clinging to their branches, others turned and falling, swaying lazily before collecting in the parking lot. For a moment, he simply watched. It was beautiful, a quiet reminder to pay attention to the small gifts nature offers. Somewhere in the distance, a bird chirped, bright and quick. Refreshed by the moment, Eckhart swung his chair back around to face Sides. We need to stay in this for as long as we can, Brian, Sides said. Like I said, we're behind, but we're not out. Eckhart slouched deeper into his chair and nodded. He said nothing, turning back toward the window. Outside, more leaves drifted down, and a squirrel darted across the open street into a pile of them. A moment later, it popped its head up, clutching some kind of nut or seed, too far away for Eckhart to tell. Behind him, Sides rummaged through his pockets. The jingle of keys told Eckhart everything. Sides was done for the day. I need it. You need it. We need it, Sides said quietly. Eckhart nodded again, the chair swaying gently with the motion. He kept his eyes on the window, listening as Sides moved down the hall, the front door groaning open. Sides was right. The risk was worth the payout, if they could manage it. They hadn't crossed any lines they couldn't step back from, and they wouldn't get caught. The question was which path to take. Tail Weber, risky, unpredictable, or return to the compound and coax someone into talking, safer, but not something they could try immediately. A few days' rest, some planning, that's what they needed. Eckhart weighed the options as Sides' engine turned over outside. He watched the car pull away, disappearing down the street, and sat alone with his thoughts as the last leaves drifted past the dirty glass.